Okay, so welcome back, Elaine, to the Zoom room for another live session, the Art of Letting Go program. So, as usual, we'll just start off with our daily email. There's quotes, some teaching. That'll lead us into today's insert, which answers the question, what is the ego? And we'll then look at the lesson, meditate on the lesson, and finally we'll read yesterday's, what we're going to do yesterday, the section on section 3 of the Song of Prayer, which talks about praying for others, how to pray for others. Okay, so let's jump in. Share my screen with you. Okay, so, all right, okay. All right, welcome back, Elaine. Did you drop out briefly?
No, I accidentally, just the finger press leaving meeting instead of okay.
Oh, right. All right, no problem. Share screen. Okay, so if you can read that quote from Neil Donald Walsh to kick it off.
Yeah. You are goodness and mercy and compassion and understanding. You are peace and joy and light. You are forgiveness and patience, strength and courage, a helper in time of need, a comforter in time of sorrow, a healer in time of injury, a teacher in times of confusion. You are the deepest wisdom and the highest truth, the greatest peace and the grandest love. You are these things, and in moments of your life, you have known yourself to be these things. Choose now to know yourself as these things always.
Oh. So lovely thought from Neil Donald Walsh. I don't know if you've read any of his books, but he wrote a series called Conversations with God, a series of 6 books.
No, I haven't.
He was homeless for about 9 months
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Yes, yeah.
before he was inspired to write the first book. So he had a series of, disasters. He was going along seemingly quite swimmingly. He had a reasonable middle class life. He had a wife. I don't think he had kids, but they were in marriage, and he had a reasonable job. But by his own admission, he was spiritually asleep. This was in his early 50s. He actually had no idea who he was, very much oriented around the physical world and um, pleasures and comforts and ambitions and so on in the physical world. And then a series of disasters hit him. He had, I think his wife left him. He had a severe injury, which stopped him working. And so, then he couldn't earn income and no sort of insurance to back him up. And so it's just like everything fell apart. He just had no resources, and he found himself having to live in a caravan park in a tent for 9 months. So there was, a block of like an ablution park, and he had some basic facilities. But he said, I mean, in the US especially, it gets really cold in winter, so -20. So you have no idea how cold it was in that tent. So that was his kind of awakening, really. So okay, the bottom's fallen out of my world. What's happened? And then he managed to get himself I think it was a part-time job. And then he was inspired to write, the first book, Conversations with God, which was kind of a bestseller. And then he wrote a number of others, and he's now 30 years on. He's a very well-known spiritual teacher. So he had that was his awakening, but it was very testing. So that's the background to the quote. He's talking about the great gifts that forgiveness or letting go will bring us. You know, help and forgiveness and patience, strength and courage, help in time of need, mercy and compassion, teacher in times of confusion, the deepest wisdom and the highest truth, the greatest peace and the grandest love. And these are actually the gifts that forgiveness or letting go will bring us. This is our higher self. And that's the theme of today's mind training lesson. It also makes the qualities of our true nature and how we might experience and express them in our lives quite practical, which again echoes what today's workbook lesson says about not waiting to claim the gifts of God or perfect love, but accepting them into your awareness now by denying the illusions that deny them. Peace is an experience that comes when we rest in our true beings, typically not associated with taking action. So it's what I call foundational happiness, the result of what some philosophers have called the ground of being. The Apostle Paul called the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. Whatever you call it, it's really about experiencing. The easiest way to experience it is to meditate for an extended period of time in a way that quiets the mind. So by the end of the meditation, you're not thinking much at all. Without this background peace, happiness is impossible. With it, happiness becomes inevitable and your natural state, as this quote expresses well. So you want to read that? Happiness is a butterfly.
Happiness is a butterfly, which when pursued is always just beyond your grasp, but which if you will sit down quietly may come and alight on you.
Yeah, lovely. So really what's that saying is if you just sit quietly as you meditate, you're not seeking anything. Happiness can just arise. It's your natural state. So just alights on you, arises in you, as the butterfly analogy is quite nice because the butterfly is a symbol of transformation. So if you would just sit quietly and allow it to alight on you, it will come. If you seek it, just like if you seek a butterfly, it's gonna fly away. So if you keep seeking, trying to catch butterflies, there's always a seeking and a striving. And the butterfly is elusive, it's going to run away from you. If you sit quietly, it may just come and alight on you. So then you might ask, well, when does happiness become joy? Talked about peace. There's happiness. What about joy? So Eckhart Tolle describes joy as vibrantly alive peace, which is a lovely description. I think it's one of the best descriptions of what joy is that I've heard. A more vital and active expression of the same underlying being or foundational happiness, as we call it, that gives rise to peace. But if you become too attached to this experience, your joy can become tainted by the mind's desire for more joy, which paradoxically blocks joy from flowing through you, leads to undesirable craving for a spiritually high experience. And such a desire or craving, as the Buddha noticed 2,500 years ago, causes suffering because it sets up an expectation that will inevitably lead to disappointment and more craving for the desired joyful state. And insight has become the second noble truth of Buddhism. So yeah, the more you seek happiness or even something more intense joy, the more elusive it becomes. Exactly what the quote says. It'll always be elusive if you pursue it, but if you just sit quietly, it will come and alight upon you. So how does one stay connected to the deep peace that is foundational happiness without craving, while experiencing a heightened state of joy in the doing of your daily activities? And the answer is to let go and flow. Letting go allows you to restore your mind to a peaceful state when it's been disturbed by anything. In other words, it restores your foundational happiness. then from this state of calm centeredness, you can act in a way that's not self-seeking. So you're not seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. Situation requires you to act. You may find joy arising spontaneously when you act in this flowing way. But if not, you remain fundamentally happy. So Eckhart Tolle talks about a relationship between happiness, peace, and joy in a three-level system, starting with acceptance, the base level, which is a level of peace or foundational happiness I talked about. So that's when you're able to let go of whatever arises, whatever negativity arises, and find an underlying sense of peace. You're not massively ecstatic, necessarily overjoyed, but you're okay. You're just okay, you're at peace. So that's kind of level one, foundational level. Then it progresses up to enjoyment, which is to actually be joyfully in the flow of life. It's like I'm actually enjoying what I do. I'm really enjoying the activity. Maybe I'm just really enjoying the meditation of it. That's also possible. There's a sense of a more vibrantly alive peace that's going on in your awareness. Finally, peaking in enthusiasm, which literally means in God in the original Greek, and can lead to an experience of ecstatic joy. Okay? Entheos, in God. This is what Abraham Maslow called a peak experience. If you really experience that, joy, it's a blissful state, he calls this a peak experience. Propose that it can be experienced by someone who has reached the transcendence level at the top of his expanded 8th level hierarchy of needs, above the level of self-actualization, which was the top of the simplified 5-level hierarchy of needs. And many people who have heard of Maslow's hierarchy, as most people have in the spiritual world, incorrectly believes the highest level of his proposed hierarchy. So why not watch that video about self-actualization, and it goes into the 8-level model as well, which has transcendence. In the 8-level model, it has transcendence above the level of self-actualization. So that's at the top of the pyramid in his initial model. But then he adds an extra 3 levels. There's aesthetic needs, there's cognitive needs, I think, and then there's then he puts self-actualization, and then above that is transcendence. So that transcendence is equivalent, the equivalent state to enlightenment. If you look at this diagram, it's going to the map of consciousness. Transcendence level in this conception by David Hawkins comes at the level of enlightenment, 700 to 1,000, which is ineffable, pure consciousness. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually, I'm not saying anything particularly different from this. They're just different hierarchies, different level systems. But in the end, it all ends up in the same place. Every one, I've looked at many of these. It's a guy called Ken Wilber, I've spoken about, done the integral, formulates the integral model. He's looked at all these developmental systems. There's many developmental systems that various thinkers, philosophers have come up with. They all end up in the same place at this level of transcendence. Enlightenment, transcendence, the ineffable, pure consciousness, pure formless awareness, perfect love, whatever you want to call it, the words don't really matter, because at that level, it is just a pure experience. So however you slice and dice it, whether you say there's 8 levels, or in this conception, there's many more, how many? About 15 levels or something. Then in the end, it all ends up in the same place. You come into this state of pure consciousness, as we prefer calling it, pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is the end goal. That's where it begins and it ends. So yeah, I encourage you listen to that video, watch that video. One of the first Western psychologists to really start acknowledging these peak experiences, these higher states of being, which have been in the Eastern teachings forever. The idea of transcending the separate self is hardly a new one. It's the highest state attainable in the ancient Indian transformational system of yoga called samadhi. It means to collect or to bring together in Sanskrit, suggesting that concentration or unification of thought and emotion and experience in which they are one with God, or an alternative language, in a state of pure formless awareness of perfect love. This state of mind is called enlightenment in many spiritual traditions. We saw, in this conception, he's called it enlightenment, the level of enlightenment, pure consciousness.
Excuse me.
Being called revelation by Yeshua, refers to as revelation because it's a perfectly unified state of mind that transcends the body and this world entirely. Whereas a miracle or correction entails a shift in perception, so it still involves an awareness of this world. But miracles do prepare our minds for an experience of samadhi, enlightenment, or revelation, whatever you want to call it, which can only happen when we're ready for it. He's saying, I can't teach you that, but I can teach you to let go of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, what blocks the experience of samadhi, perfect enlightenment, or revelation. So the whole focus of this mind training is to let go of those blocks, and then you prepare the way for the coming of this enlightened state. So if you look at it briefly in our diagram, his job, he's saying, I'm going to show you how to raise yourself up out of this very limited and limiting perspective of the ego, stuck in the red box of your separate self, believing all the experiences in time and space are real. And he's going to help us to let go of our misperceptions and really be identified with oneself. We really do think and feel and act as one self, the Christ. And our perceptions and then our thoughts and our words and our actions are guided by that self. That is the preparation for the coming then of the state of pure formless awareness, which is revelation, which is samadhi, whatever you want to call it, which then comes, he says, God takes the final step. Okay, so you can't really train that. He says, I can't train you for that, but I can train you to be ready for it. It will come when you're ready. So the focus of the mind training is really on raising you up from being rooted in your separate self and believing all the stuff in the world is real, and raising you up out of that into an awareness of your true self that's able to perceive the world correctly. And then he's saying, if you do that, you keep doing that, the revelation will happen. God takes the final step, in other words, and eventually you just kind of merge into the state and you become one with it. Okay, so we've been through this before, but a little recap of the system of the Holy Trinity, which is just an operating system that shows you how to get out of the dream. There's a movie for you, the Samadhi movie, which is definitely worth watching if you haven't watched it already. It talks about the idea of Samadhi and how to attain it, and goes into quite a few of the Eastern teachings, relates them also to Western ideas. So it's about an hour and a bit. Definitely worth watching that if you haven't already. And so that brings us to our practice for today in the session. Okay, so any questions on any of that?
No, that's good.
Yeah, all right. Good. Let's look at today's lesson. So we're going to go to let's have a look at what is the ego. If you can read that, Elaine, in the alternative, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. The ego or belief in separation is false. the sign of a limited, separate self born in a body, doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. It is the will that perceives the pure formless awareness of perfect love as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The belief in separation is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful. Life is really death, and what opposes pure formless awareness of perfect love alone is true. It's just explaining that the ego is the belief in separation, and it's false, limited, and it's born in a body doomed to suffer and die. And it'll, it's pure formless awareness of perfect love is its enemy. So it'll do everything to deny it. And he sees that love is actually weakness, and fear is strength. The strength is weaker. Yeah.
What I like about this section is really naming the ego, saying this is what it is. Let's not mince our words. Let's not pretend it's something it's not, and try and sanitize it and make it into something nice or acceptable, as some teachers and teachings do. So, the ego's okay, and you need some level of ego to function in the world. And I've heard, apparently quite advanced teachers saying this. But this is false teaching. The ego is the opposite of love, and it's not something that you want in your mind at all. It's not something you should tolerate one iota in your mind or in your life. So that that's some teachers will say, well, that's a pretty hard line. There's no room for any compromise there. It's pretty dogmatic, and criticize it. But the problem is, if you fudge that belief and you say, well, all right, the ego's not so bad, we can tolerate it, we can manage it, then you have to accept all of it as true. You're accepting then that fear and pain and suffering and sickness and death and or the entire thought system has some kind of validity there, but it has some place in your mind, in your life, in your reality. And of course, if you allow that, then so it will be for you, because your belief is powerful. If you allow that belief system to continue, then you continue to experience its effects in your life, and you continue to suffer, and ultimately you die. And yes, you're saying, but this belief is completely unnecessary. You don't need this belief at all to be who you really are. This belief must be undone. You can't believe this at all, because in fact it's the complete denial of who you are. So you can't manage, somehow oversee this. We've talked before about the idea of God somehow, being above the ego in some hierarchy. And well, as long as God's in charge and managing your ego, then it's okay. But you can't manage an entity that's completely against you. I mean, any employer will tell you that an employee that's completely dead set against what the employer tells them to do cannot be employed. You can't. There's no basis for any relationship if they're completely at odds and opposite, which is the case. So this is a big part of the non-dual understanding. It's the ego is opposite to God, opposite to love, and it must be undone. You must let it go. The only way of undoing it is by letting it go. You can't fight it and expect to undo it. That just strengthens it, gives it a illusory power that it doesn't have through your own resistance to it. It's the letting go of it and the recognition that it's just not real. So none of those thoughts and emotions are real. So you can just let them go and remain in your true awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love. Okay, so happy to go to number 2 then.
Yeah. The belief in separation is insane. In fear, it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from or in separation from the infinite. In its insanity, it thinks it has become a victor over pure formless awareness of perfect love itself. And in its terrible autonomy, It sees that pure formless awareness of perfect love has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies, who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. Just saying that the belief in separation is insane. It's fear, it stands beyond everywhere apart from all. It's separate from the infinite. It's the victor over the pure formless awareness. It's a terrible state of affairs to be in. And I think that the pure form,
like a little bubble of thought. I mean, it's as if you want to visualize it. It's like we're in a sea of light. It's just this infinite light. And then there's this little dark bubble surrounded by the sea of infinite light. And then we sit in the dark bubble. And because the bubble's dark, on the inside, it looks like it's all dark and there's no light. And so this whole universe is that little dark bubble. That's all. It's a little bubble blown up by thought that sits within this infinite sea of awareness, what we call reality or God. And when we're inside of it, we can't see the light. We just see, you know, the dark constraints of the world. It seems to be very limited. And of course, it all seems to be very real. That's cunning of the illusion. If it was all just seemingly dark and terrible, you could awaken quite quickly. You should go, well, this is just, I'm out of here. But apparently, the dream world, the illusion, seems to offer you some stuff. So within the darkness, it's like, although it's dark, there's images projected that cover that darkness. And so now your mind gets attached to the images. You don't see that underlying that is the darkness of the ego's thought system. These images are distortions of the mind. The distortions when you have false beliefs, they create distortions over pure formless awareness, and that becomes the projector through which now the mind projects out, and those distortions go out into the world, and they get projected onto the screen, four-dimensional screen of time and space. And now you perceive those distortions in your mind as reality because they've been projected out. And so we live in our own movie theater. The world is the movie. This is the movie house. The world and our lives in the movie are the movie playing out for us, and we've each made up our own movie. We're the star of the show, of our own life. Quite a program, quite a dream when you start understanding.
Mm.
But he's saying, look at it honestly, and you see that this is insane. Who would do this? But an insane mind that now values itself over pure formless awareness of perfect love as something real. It values all this falsely. And then the consequence of this is that you must dream of punishment and tremble at the figures in your dreams. So we look at descent into hell diagram. The consequence of believing in separation is that you must believe that you are guilty for the imagined sin of destroying God, or love, or oneness, or pure formless awareness, whatever you want to call it. Because the only way you're going to have an existence as a separate self is if you have destroyed oneness. See? The two are mutually irreconcilable. You can't have perfect oneness and also have a separate identity, because the separate identity contradicts perfect oneness. So there's no perfect oneness is not true. Separation is true. And therein is the conflict, the fundamental conflict between the ego being the idea of separation and the idea of oneness being God, ultimate truth and reality. Those ideas will never reconcile. It's such simple logic, isn't it? You see that? It's not rocket science. Like, well, you're either one or you're separate, but you can't be both. One of those states is true and one is not. Because if you're perfectly one, then separation cannot exist. And if you're separated, then separation is true, perfect oneness is not. So that's the logical premise of this whole teaching. It's like that logic, you cannot reconcile these two states because they deny each other. They're at odds, they're in conflict. So Yeshua's saying, well, accept that and then choose one. Choose right. If you choose the pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is your original state, then you will recognize that, that the thought of separation is illusory, ultimately. And you will undo that belief. And what will remain then is just your pure formless awareness of perfect love or perfect oneness without any thought of separation, which is your true and original state. And you'll simply go back to how you were before the tiny mad idea of separation entered your mind, and you hellish state of thinking you're separated self, living in this fairly cruel world that's outside of you, that will ultimately cause you to die. You realize that whole story, the entire reality, everything, every part of it, every aspect, every experience in it, every person, every seemingly separate entity in this dream world is simply false. Doesn't really exist. And therein lies your salvation from. Therein is your freedom from, when you really understand that. Because you don't need to keep thinking these thoughts of the ego and believing in them and recreating its reality over and over. You don't need to do that anymore. You realize that you're free of that you can just believe and know, ultimately, going beyond belief to knowing that only pure formless awareness of perfect love is true. Therefore, only that is real and nothing else is real. Only the truth is true and nothing else is true. So the fundamental principle of A Course in Miracles. Okay?
Yeah.
So happy with number 2.
Yes.
Number 3.
The extension of perfect love is without the belief in separation. What can I know of madness and the death of perfect love when I live in pure formless awareness of perfect love? What can I know of sorrow and suffering when I live in eternal joy? What can I know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, and of hatred and attack when all there is surrounding it? It is everlasting peace, forever conflict-free and undisturbed in deepest silence and tranquility. So it's just saying, what can we know of this madness and the death of the perfect love when we live in this pure formless awareness of perfect love, and where it knows nothing of sorrow and suffering, it lives eternal joy. So it knows, as I say, anything of hatred and attack. It's just surrounded by this everlasting peace, conflict-free, undisturbed, and tranquil.
So he never leaves us in the ego. He gives us, the first 2 paragraphs are what I call stick paragraphs. It's like, okay, there's the the darkness of the ego system, and I'm going to explicitly name it. And it can all seem to be a bit grim and hopeless. And then he switches it and says, but actually, none of this is true. In truth, the belief in separation doesn't exist. So the top of the ladder of separation, the ego is just the belief in separation that doesn't exist. It's not a true belief. So if that's not true, then nothing that comes from it is true. That's the simple logic of the Holy Spirit, isn't it? Okay, so fortunately, because that one belief in separation is untrue, everything that follows from it must be untrue. That's simple logic, isn't it? But it's so it's so radical because that means everything is untrue. Our lives here are untrue, our births, our deaths, everything in between, our
Just a
sickness,
movie.
our suffering, our pain, it's all unreal.
Mm.
None of it's ultimately true because it's based on the idea that we can actually be a separate self. And we can incarnate as individuals and play out this idea of separation in the dream world. But it will remain forever untrue, which is why we can always be saved and be freed from this by simply recognizing that this is all untrue. That there is no separation, that none of the consequences of separation, which we seem to experience in this dream world, are even there. They don't exist. They're false. Very, very simple. That's such a clear, simple teaching. But to do it means you must overturn your entire thought system. Everything that you thought you knew, that you thought you believed, everything you thought you were in this world must be undone. And that's where most people go, well, that's too extreme. I want a softer version of spirituality that allows me to keep my ego intact and still play the game of being human. And there's teachings that will allow that. Yeah, well, they'll say body, mind, and spirit, it's all part of God. And it doesn't really ever solve the problem. Okay, well, why then, if God is only love, do we have so much pain and suffering and sickness and death in this world? Doesn't really answer that question, does it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a mystery. God works in mysterious ways. These are the kinds of answers you get, which are not really satisfying because they don't really make sense. God works in mysterious ways. Okay, so it's just apparently all powerful and all knowing, and yet there's all this pain and suffering and sickness and death, and people are suffering and dying all the time. Why? Well, why would a loving God do that?
Mm.
You never, that's the conundrum, isn't it? That's like, well, why, if you're honest about it, which is causes that question, causes many Christians and other people with other religious faiths to lose their faith. I can't, especially if something bad happens. I can't believe in this anymore. Actually, that's just the undoing of the false belief. Because beyond that lies the truth that actually God didn't create you. That's the only way out of it, isn't it? Okay, so God created the world, but it's a complete mess, and there's all this pain and suffering, sickness and death. But God is love. God created the world. Okay, there's a contradiction there. I can't believe both of those and be logically consistent. So this teaching says, well, you don't have to, because one of them is true and one of them is false. God is love. If that's true, then God couldn't have created the world, because this is not a world made by love. It's a world in which, in fact, the opposite of love seems to be more prevalent. So then you start seeing the truth that, okay, this is another entity, which we call the ego, consciousness, belief in separation, Satan, universal mind, was called by the Gnostics, many, many names. There's this other part of the mind that's invented this whole world, believes that it's true, and yet it's not true. It's false. So you're living in a false world. You're living in a false hallucination, a dream, an illusion, which is what many of the Eastern teachings have been saying for thousands of years. It's a dream. It's an illusion. It's a hallucination. It's not reality. You're living in a dream world. As Morpheus said to Neo, you're living in a dream world. You've been living in a dream world. You haven't known it. But fortunately, there is a way out of it. You can find pure forms of what is perfect love. And that's what he's pointing to in this paragraph. He's saying, you can live in eternal joy. This peak state we talked about, the peak experience we have here in this world is just our normal natural state in eternity. That's always there. So the very peak of experience here, we call it peak experience or mystic experience or revelation or samadhi. is just completely, in fact, that's just a really glimpse, because it's in heaven, it's going to be even better. There's no awareness of anything else at all that can come in and interfere with it. And so the entire thought system of fear and punishment and sin and guilt and hatred and attack, which the ego's invented based on the idea of separation, guilt is inevitable. And then because you feel guilty, there must be fear. You fear punishment, which appears to be real. And then that fear projects out as anger. Now you feel angry. You think God is angry with you. You're angry with God, and you accuse and blame, attack others, because that's what projection of guilt does. You're trying to offload your guilt onto them and somehow get rid of it. Say, well, I'm not the guilty one, you're the guilty. And that's why we have a world where there is so much, attack. Why do we have, continuous wars? It's another 2 wars still going on. Ukraine, Israel. Just seems endless, doesn't it? This endless conflict. And it's because of the ego, because that's a logical consequence. Conflict is a logical consequence of its thought system. So anyway, out of it is to deny all of it and say, I'm going for the whole, I'm going for pure formless awareness of perfect love, and I'm leaving this entire world behind. That's radical in most people's terms, but it's the only way. There's no other way to find peace of mind and some kind of peace of mind and happiness while you're here. Because if any of this is real, it's horrendous. If you're in a nightmare, how can you find peace of mind if the world and all of its horrors are real? Impossible. So the only way out is to let them go, and you let them go by denying their reality. Saying this isn't true, this isn't real, or the only thing that is real is my pure formless awareness, which I start to experience more and more. As I deny the world, this experience will arise more and more in my mind. Yeah. So, all right. Any other thoughts on the 3rd paragraph?
That's good.
Okay. Number 4. To know reality.
To know reality is not to see the belief in separation and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its freedom, and the cost belief in it entails. In suffering, the price for faith in it is so immense that crucifixion of the extension of perfect love is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. So to know reality is not the belief in separation with all
again, it gives us a stick.
Yeah, with all all the dreams and thoughts and hopes and plans and freedom.
It's a powerful line, that, isn't it? Just read it again, the first one. To know reality, not to see.
No, reality is not to see the belief in separation and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, its belief, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its freedom, and the cost belief in it entails.
It's really saying, just deny it all. All the thoughts, the works, the acts, the laws, the beliefs, the dreams, the hopes, plans for its freedom, cost belief it entails. That's the entire world that you think is real. Gone right there. He's just saying, deny it all. Just don't see it. Not to perceive, Sean. So again, it's radical, but that it's radical freedom. So without any of that, what would I be? I would just be pure formless awareness of perfect love. There'd be nothing else. Just resting in this state that in the ego mind is inconceivable. It's like, well, we've forgotten that piece because our world is so filled with these ideas of separation and all of its thoughts and its works and its acts and its laws and its beliefs. It populates our world, and our focus, our attention is focused on these things. And they are all distractions from the underlying deeper awareness that is still there, but it's just covered over by all of these distractions. And then he says, the price for faith is so immense because everyone dies in the end. Blood must flow before the altar, but sick before is prepared to die. In the end, it all leads to one thing, and that is death. Look at the timeline here. It all leads to the one the end result, no matter what happens in your life, will be your death. It's pretty much the end of the human journey, isn't it? Everyone dies, no matter what you did, no matter what you achieved in that short space of time, 70, 80, 90 years. And everything in that time leads to one thing, death. So then you have to start going, well, what is the point of that? Why would you do that when you could just stay in pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is timeless, and you don't have to go through all these experiences? What is the point of them? Well, the only point while you're in them is to undo the ego mind that created them. So now your only purpose becomes to let go of those thoughts and emotions that characterize the ego, psychological and emotional attachments, and to raise yourself up in your awareness into this awareness, and do that consistently. Do that whenever you face any kind of challenge. Go back into this awareness, because in this awareness, you come home. This awareness, you become who you are. And now you can look down upon the madness of the ego's thought system from above the battleground, from a place of sanity and a place of peace, and have a sense of a calm, peaceful perspective on it. So that's what he's training us to do. And the more we do that, the more we merge into this peace, the peace of God he called surpasses all understanding, because it's not logical. By the world's logic, this does not exist. The ego's logic says no, only the world and only the separate self is real. So it's completely illogical to the ego, but then the ego is illogical itself. Makes no sense and doesn't even exist. So don't look to it for any kind of logic. It has a twisted logic of its own. But that logic is all false, because the fundamental idea behind the whole system of logic is false. Okay. And then again, he doesn't leave us in the horror of the ego, the stick. He finishes off on an inspiring note. So read number 5.
Yeah. Yet, one thought of letting go will change the separate self's limited awareness into pure formless awareness, and the foundation of illusions to the home of life itself. And peace will be restored forever to the pure minds, which pure formless awareness of perfect love extends as its extension, its dwelling place, its joy, its love, completely one with itself. So it's just saying through just one thought of letting go can change the limit awareness of the separate self into this pure formless awareness.
Yeah.
And peace will be restored forever in the pure minds of pure formless awareness.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, lovely. So he never leaves us in hell. So just one thought of letting go. Because one thought of letting go brings you back home. If you can really let go, you go back into this awareness. And immediately you find comfort. You know, the Holy Spirit's called the Comforter in the Bible and also in the Course. It's an alternative name for it. Comforter brings you a sense of comfort and peace and rest, irrespective of what seems to be going on the battlefield. And so, you know, this is what we need to turn to. Source of eternal peace that really doesn't matter what's going on in the dream world at all. That peace remains. Unchangeable, undisturbable, it's immovable because it's always been the same. It's eternal. Eternal means it's always there, never changed. Just read the first sentence got obscured because my internet connection was a bit dodgy. So you can read that again.
Yeah, one thought of letting go will change the separate self's limited awareness into pure formless awareness and the foundation of illusions to the home of life itself. Yeah, is that? You want the rest?
Just one thought of letting go. So we always just one thought away from going home. So I say, you know, I'm in my spirit after my PS, so PS, you know, remember you're ever one breath away from it because it's right there. And one breath can restore your awareness to the truth. One breath, one thought restores you into your true awareness, which is really good news. And you can never be that lost there. Just learn to apply that letting go, thought of letting go consistently, no matter what. Don't make exceptions. So that you can change your separate self's limited awareness into pure formless awareness and the foundation of illusions to the home of life itself. And then inevitably, peace will be restored. If there's only pure formless awareness of perfect love and nothing else, then peace is inevitable because there's nothing to conflict with. And peace and love and joy all go together, and the words just don't really do the state justice. They are ways of describing a state that is completely transcendent, that is ineffable, transcendent, whatever words you want to use, as Abraham Maslow and David Hawkins and other teachers who come up with these models of consciousness teach. You know, ineffable, can't be described, pure consciousness. It just is. It's transcendent. It's a peak experience. It's mystic experience. It's peace of God that surpasses all understanding. It's enlightenment, samadhi, nirvana, bliss, revelation. There are many, many names in different languages, different cultures, different spiritual traditions for the same state. And our only job is to experience that state, invite the state of pure formless awareness more and more into our lives through all our thoughts and our words and our actions. And that involves letting go in order to attain more and more, experience more and more of this pure awareness. We must let go of our other ways to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
So, can do a meditation on this, or we can go straight into the Song of Prayer.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't done the lesson.
No, yeah, I was thinking, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's do the lesson. Okay, do the lesson. And then we'll do the Song of Prayer, and then we'll do a meditation to wrap it up. Okay, so if you can read that in the original and alternative, the key idea, and then paragraph 1 of the original.
Today I claim the gifts forgiveness gives. I accept the gifts letting go gives me today.
Talking about the gifts of God, the gifts of letting go bring. So focusing on some of the benefits. What are these gifts that you get from letting go? Okay, let's see what he has to say. You read number 1 in the original and then the alternative sentence by sentence, please.
Yeah. I will not wait another day to find the treasures that my Father offers me. I will not wait another day to find the treasures that my source offers me. Illusions are all vain. Illusions are
Just
all
start
vain.
again, mate. I'm sorry, you just said my internet connection's unstable. I'll not wait another day.
I will not wait another day to find the treasures that my source offers me. And illusions are all vain, and dreams are gone, even while they are woven out of thoughts that rest on false perception. Illusions are all vain, and dreams are gone, even while they are woven out of thoughts that rest on false perceptions. Let me not accept such meager gifts again today. I will not accept such meager gifts again today. God's voice is offering the peace of God to all who hear and choose to follow him. Perfect love's voice is offering the peace of perfect love to all who hear and choose to follow it. This is my choice today. This is my choice today. And so I go to find the treasures God has given me. And so I find the treasures pure formless awareness of perfect love has given me. So it's just saying, not to wait any longer. You can claim it now, what the offer offers us, and take the gifts that it offers instead of all the suffering and false perceptions and the meager gifts. We want to accept the gifts from pure formless awareness of perfect love. This is where we find all our true treasures.
And this is my choice, emphasizing I must choose. I can choose these gifts or I can choose to deny them. It's always my choice. Even when the circumstances are dire, as we discussed in the expression session, you still have a choice. I think that's what's the inspiring thing about seeing these people who can respond in an inspired way to the adversity. They made a choice, didn't they? So no matter what the circumstances are, you have a choice about how you respond to them. And that's always the case, even in the most extreme circumstances, as demonstrated by Yeshua, our teacher on the cross. Extreme suffering, extreme limitation. He's about to die, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He still has a choice as to how he perceives it. And we always do. We're not a victim of our circumstances. We're not forced to respond in an egoic way. We can choose a different, higher way. even in the most extreme circumstances. And that's really what this mind training is about. When you get tested, and it's tempting to believe in the ego and act it out, play it out as we do in our dream character in the dream world, make another choice. You don't have to do that. The mind training is just there to remind us continuously, yeah, you have a choice. You can actually change your mind, irrespective of what seems to be happening in the dream. Okay. Any other thoughts on number one? Otherwise, do the prayer, second paragraph, the very short prayer.
I seek but the eternal, choose only the eternal. For your son can be content with nothing less than this. For your extension can be content with nothing less than this. What then it can be his solace but what you are offering to this bewildered mind and frightened heart to give him certainty and bring him peace? What then can comfort me except what you are offering to my bewildered mind and frightened heart to give me certainty and bring me peace? Today I would behold my brother sinless. Today I choose to perceive my companions as innocent. This your will for me, for so will I behold my sinlessness. This is your awareness for me, for so I experience my own innocence.
Yeah. So thoughts on that? Let me read it from the top.
I choose only the eternal, for the extension can be content with nothing less than this. What then it can comfort me except what you are offering to my bewildered mind and frightened heart to give me certainty and bring me peace? Today I choose to perceive my companions as innocent. This is your awareness for me, for so I experience my own innocence. So it's, yeah, well, if we choose the eternal, then, we have the comfort of that instead of the frightened heart, and the other will bring us peace. And see our companions as innocent. So this is your awareness for me, also I experience my own innocence. Oh,
Yeah, I think what's emphasizing here is that it's a choice. That I choose to perceive my companions as innocent. As I perceive them as innocent, so I perceive myself. This is your awareness for me, so I experience my own innocence. So your will instead of your will, this is your awareness for me, is innocence. And only in this way do I experience my own innocence. So Annie usually brings up how we perceive others. So if I choose to perceive my companions as innocent, then I must experience myself as innocent. So I experience my own innocence. Okay, so any other thoughts on this one, Elaine?
no, that's fine. That's good.
Okay, so we'll go into the Song of Prayer, shall we?
Yeah, yes.
Hopefully we'll have time for meditation. All right. So some prayer. Where are we? Okay, so this is section 3.3, section 3 of the Song of Prayer, which is one of the supplements to A Course in Miracles, all about prayer. So this one is entitled Praying for Others. So this is going to talk about how we pray for others and what's involved and how to do it and not to do it. All right, so if you want to read number 1 in the original and then the alternative, sentence by sentence, please.
We said that prayer is always for yourself, and this is so. Yeshua said that prayer is always for myself, and this is so. Why then should you pray for others at all? Why then should I pray for others at all? And if you should, how should you do it? And if I should, how should I do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting your projections of guilt from your brothers and enabling you to recognize it is not he who is hurting you. Praying for others, is rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting my projections of belief in separation from my companions and enabling me to recognize it is not them who are hurting me. The poisonous thought that he is your enemy, your evil counterpart, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. This poisonous thought that they are my enemy, my evil counterpart, my nemesis, must be relinquished before I can be freed from guilt.
Just pause there. So change it to active. So I must let go. Put it into the active tense. Let's let go of the poisonous thought that they are my enemy, my evil counterpart, my nemesis. Before I can be freed from guilt. Yeah. So we notice, I mean, this is a tendency of the ego, isn't it? You know, we've all had these people in our lives and we kind of can't help perceiving them as some kind of evil counterpart or nemesis or enemy. Before I can be freed from guilt. So I must let go of that misperception, otherwise guilt will still be in my mind. So he's making the connection here between seeing anyone as an enemy and guilt. Why? Because guilt, if we look at this, guilt demands punishment. And so we don't want to accept that punishment for ourselves. So the ego tries to project it out, says someone else will be punished. And an enemy is just the perfect person for that purpose, isn't it? Oh, they're my enemy, they're the evil ones, they're the ones who are wrong and bad. They are the ones who are going to be punished by God. And therefore, I'm off the hook. They're the ones who are going to be punished. And I get to keep my separate identity as a separate self from them and offload the guilt onto them. And the ego goes, right, good job. Kept my separate identity intact. In fact, I strengthened it, and I'm not the guilty one. They're the guilty one. So they're going to be punished. And then, you know, if you take that thought system to an extreme, then you enact the punishment. Okay, well, I'll be the one to punish them then on behalf of God. And so, you know, in the name of God, all these cruelties are done to people who are really your brothers, and yet you perceive them as your enemy, and therefore it's justified to attack them, hurt them, kill them, when actually they're just yourself. It's all madness. Okay, so is that clear why becomes a means? Okay, it becomes a means of lifting your projections. My projections of the belief in separation, projections of guilt. Actually, I don't want guilt. On the right, and it's interesting the AI does that. So it's figured out that guilt and the belief in separation are the same thing. Interesting,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? I didn't tell it to do that. It does that.
Mm-hmm.
It understands on some level. However, I want guilt in there because it's belief in separation is one level up. Once we get down to the level of guilt, then you're into the mechanics of how the ego works. And the ego is always trying to project guilt onto others. So praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting my projections of guilt from my companions and enabling me to recognize it is not them who are hurting me. It's myself. It's my own guilt that's hurting me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The poisonous thought that he
Yeah.
is your enemy, your evil counterpoint, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. Yeah, just done that one.
Mm.
For this, the means a prayer of rising power and with ascending goals until it reaches even up to God. For this, the means is prayer of rising power with ascending goals until it reaches up even to pure formless awareness of perfect love itself.
Okay, and then from the top, just read it in the alternative.
Yeshua said that prayer is always for myself, and this is so. Why then should I pray for others at all? Why then should I pray for others at all? And if I should, how should I do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting my projections of guilt from my companions, enabling me to recognize it is not them who are hurting me. I must let go of the poisonous thought that they are my enemy, my evil counterpoint, my nemesis, before I can be freed from guilt. For this, the means is prayer of rising power with ascending goals until it reaches even to pure formless awareness of perfect love itself. So it's just about the prayer is always for ourselves, and this is so. So it's asking us, why are we praying for others when it really, because it's understanding, it becomes a lifting of my projections of guilt on my companions and enabling to recognize it's not them who are hurting me, it's myself, it's my poisonous thought that they are enemies, and so
So when I forgive them, forgive myself. I let go of my own guilt and fear, hatred and attack thoughts. When I forgive them, that's what it means to forgive. I let go of those thoughts and emotions that are triggered in me by them. So it's so simple. You're not really forgiving anyone else except yourself. You're just letting go of your own negative thoughts and emotions as they arise, as they're triggered by others. You let them go. Now that becomes the way out of the ego. It's such a simple truth, isn't it? When you look at it, it's like, well, why don't we all understand that?
Mm.
Surely that should be obvious. But actually, it's the deepest truth in this world. It's a wisdom that very few people have.
Mm.
Because the ego does not want you to understand this. It will defend its illusions violently and viciously to protect itself from the undoing that will come when you understand this simple truth. Okay. It's never about the outside world or anyone else. It's just a reflection of the world is a reflection of my own thought. So if I'm getting angry, I'm getting upset, it's not really the other person to blame. It's my own egoic thought system arising. And the way out of that is to let it go. As those thoughts and emotions arise, deny them, let them go. Don't blame anyone else. Just understand that that's your own stuff arising. And if you keep doing that, then the ego has to be undone. It's so simple. Surely that's like it's not a complex idea, not that difficult to understand. And yet it's a very rare understanding. It's a very rare person who fully understands that and applies it. The person whose mind has awakened from the dream, whose mind is trained on God and nothing else, enlightened beings. So they've done this. And they symbolize, their possibility for everyone. As Yeshua said, you shall do these things that I've done, even greater things. So as he let go of his belief in sin and guilt and forgave everyone, even as his persecutors on the cross, so can you. And in doing that, you'll free yourself from all of the egoic thought system and reach, as he said, reaches even to pure formless awareness, perfect love itself. So this might be cool. I mean, he says this in other parts of the course as well, but this paragraph is really getting us to the very crux of the whole teaching. And how do you undo the ego? Well, you forgive your apparent enemies. You do that by letting go of the negative thoughts and emotions that you experience towards them. Very simple. That's all you got to do. Because it's not them that's the problem. It's your own ego that's the problem. And the ego's just been activated by them. Then it projects it out and says, no, you to blame. Because it's defense against the knowledge that actually it's just me. They've just triggered something in me to arise. And that's the false self now arising, the false thoughts and emotions. So this is really this is the absolute Achilles heel of the ego. If you understand that it uses the projections to project its guilt onto others and therefore defend its whole thought system, the projections become the way out. So, well, if I can see those projections differently, that they are just the projections of my own ego, and they give me the opportunity to let go of my belief in the ego as they arise, then I have the way out. So the mechanism of enslavement, the projections, the primary defense of the ego, becomes the way out, becomes the Achilles heel of the ego, which allows you ultimately to undo its entire thought system and escape from its thought system and the dream that it's created. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's critical. Yeah, he's giving it to us. In these teachings, he's telling us again, this is the way out. Forgive your enemy by letting go of thoughts, poisonous thoughts and emotions that are stimulated in you by your enemy. Because that keeps the ego going, it keeps the guilt going, it keeps you suffering and dying. if you believe those thoughts. Okay. Any other thoughts on number one?
No, that's good.
Move to number two then.
The earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. The earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not for love, nor do they come from one who understands that they are calls for death made out of fear by those who cherish guilt. They call for vengeance, not for love, nor do they come from understanding that they are calls for death made out of fear by me who cherishes belief in separation. They call upon a vengeful God, and if it is he who seems to answer them, they call upon a vengeful, pure formless awareness of perfect love, and it is it who seems to answer them.
I'll keep it as vengeful God. And notice that it's small God.
Yeah.
God is.
Hell cannot be asked for another and then escaped by him who asks for it. Hell cannot be asked for another and then escaped by me who asks for it. Only those who are in hell can ask for hell. Only I who am in hell can ask for hell. Those who have been forgiven and who accepted their forgiveness could never make a prayer like that. Needs to be lifted up a bit more. Let's see. I who have been forgiven and who accepted my letting go could never make a prayer like that.
Yes, I cannot ask, I'm just changing syntax, I cannot ask for victim of suffering for another, and then escape it myself. So whenever you wish ill upon someone else, you actually are condemning yourself to that. You're making that a reality. And ask for victim and suffering for another, and then escape. These states myself. And the I who am in. Victimhood and suffering. So that's our translation for hell. And ask for these states. So let's say only my separate self. Only my separate self. Which exists. State of victimhood and suffering. Can ask for these states. You have been released. Do you want to read? Have you read the last one? 7?
To go from the top?
Did you read number 7?
Sorry, I'll read it. I only have been released, and to accept my letting go could never make a prayer like that. Oh yeah, no, I had mentioned it, yeah.
You have been released, and you have accepted their forgiveness, accepted my release. I've been released and accepted my freedom, really. When I have been, maybe I have been, and I have been released and accepted my freedom. I can never, I'll never make a prayer. I'll never pray like this. No. So the prayer of malice, it's like a curse. Prayer of malice is a curse, isn't it? Cursing someone. Well, I wish ill upon you. And that makes the ego's whole system real. Makes the hellish state you seem to be in real. Because you wish it upon another, you made it real in your own mind. That's why you always attack yourself, always curse yourself, or bless yourself accordingly. When I've been released and accepted my freedom, I'll never pray like this. It's very tempting. We've got, if one person, or got someone we love to hate, and one person is really the bane of your life. It's like pushing your buttons and seemingly causing you endless difficulty, suffering. It's very easy to project onto them and say, well, it's your fault. I hate you. My life's miserable because of you. So the great temptation of the ego to do that. But if you do that, then you fall into its trap. It's exactly what it wants you to be. Because that makes it real, the thought system separation real, it makes victimhood and suffering real, because you've just projected all of that art onto them, and so you've maintained it in your mind. And so you continue under the ego's influence, and you continue to suffer and die. Not very smart, is it? When you understand what you're doing. Okay, by judging this other person and wishing ill upon them, I'm really condemning myself to a life of victimhood, suffering, and ultimately death. Wow, okay. If I see it that way, maybe I won't do it. This is what he's saying to us. When I've been released and accepted my freedom, I'll never pray like this. Okay. Did you read it from the top?
Oh, I don't think I did.
Oh, just want to do that.
My earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not for love, nor do they come from someone who understands that they are calls for death, made out of fear for me, who cherishes the belief in separation. They call upon a vengeful God, and it is it that seems to answer them. I cannot ask for victimhood and suffering for another, and then escape these states myself. Only my separate self, which exists in a state of victimhood and suffering, can possibly ask for these states. When I have been released, and have accepted my freedom, I will never pray like this. So it's just a prayer that they're talking about
Okay,
at the bottom of the
thoughts on
ladder.
that?
Yeah, just about if you're on the pray for vengeance and so forth, you're just giving it back to yourself, the suffering. So the freedom comes from releasing that and letting go of the enemy, and choose never to pray like that again.
Yeah, and then you can actually free yourself, because otherwise you just seem to recreate the same thing. My sister's just got another job, and she had a narcissistic, vindictive overlord of a boss in her previous one, and she's got another one just like him. Isn't that interesting? Well, different job, but same scenario.
So it's her projection.
Exactly. Of course, it's a projection. Following her around, until she resolves it, and goes, okay, this is a lesson. And I need to actually forgive this person by letting go of my own feeling of feeling victimized, of feeling unfairly treated, of feeling angry, unfair, and temptation, beware the temptation to feel unfairly treated. Until I let that go, and I'll just recreate it again. Well, every job I get, I'll create the same situation. Because that's what's still in my mind. It's still very much part of my thought system. So of course, then that's what happens. You have to it has to be projected out, and you have to experience it. It's to play out in life. Go, okay, well, best I let this go, or I'll just keep recreating this stuff over and over and over again. And it gets very wearing. She's very tired. She's weary. She's sick. Well, because it's just the same old stuff, same old shit, over and over and over again, until you let it go and you learn your lesson. So this teaching is saying, look, this is how it is. Just do what I'm saying. Be free. Forgive your enemies, meaning let go of your own negative thoughts and emotions towards them, and you free yourself. Surely that's not that hard to do. Or do you prefer to suffer, stay in a state of victimhood and suffering yourself, and hang on to the idea that you have enemies? All right. So happy with number 2. Let's go to number 3.
These levels then, the learning goal must be to recognize that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. At these levels, then, my learning goal must be to recognize that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. Where are we? This is enough. This is enough. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. My next ascent begins with this. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus thus have I made of him my enemy.
Yeah, so my next ascent. So he's talking about my next step up the ladder to pure formless awareness, perfect love, begins with this. Yeah. Read that in alternative. What I've asked for my companions.
What I have asked for my companions is not what I want, and so I've made them my enemy.
Yeah, it is apparent that this step cannot be reached.
Sorry, I can't see. Where am I? What? I'm a bit lost here. Where am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I've highlighted.
It's apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by me if I see no value or advantage to myself in setting others free. I can't. This one's got me. Yeah, where on earth is it? Sorry, Mike.
Just maybe delayed. Yeah, just go back
right.
up.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this may be long delayed because it may seem to be dangerous instead of merciful. This may be long delayed because it may seem to be dangerous instead of merciful. Shall I just read it in the alternative because it's making me dizzy? To the
Merciful
guilty,
is kind.
yeah, seem to be dangerous instead of kind. To the guilty, there seems indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies, and this imagined gain must go if enemies are to be set free. So from the top, at these levels then, my learning goal must be to recognize that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which I pray. This is enough. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. My next step up the ladder to pure formless awareness of perfect love begins with this. What I have asked for, my companions, is not what I want, and so I have made them my enemy. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by me if I perceive no value or advantage to myself in setting others free. This may be long delayed because it may seem to be dangerous instead of kind. To the guilty, there seems indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies, and I must let of this imagined gain if I am to be set free, to be set my enemies free.
So what's he saying in this one?
Well, depending on how we pray as to what we'll get out of it, if that's the right word. So there's an easy step to the next level, which is this next step is pure formless awareness. I don't know if it's that easy, but and so we need to set our enemies free by releasing our guilt from ourselves, even though we're going to be very unsettled and feared about this, as we cherish our enemies. We think there's an advantage in it. Of this imagined, yeah.
Yeah, you got to notice, just how attached your ego is to the idea of an enemy, and how it constantly looks for enemies. In fact, it needs enemies to survive because it makes the ego real. If you have an enemy, then you must be separate. This explains why the world is set up the way it is, why we seem to have all this hatred and enemies going on in our individual lives, personal lives, as collective groups, so countries, one country set against another. It's all madness, but it happens because the ego requires an enemy in order to be real. You're saying I must let go of all imagined gain in having an enemy if I am to set my enemies free. I want to say, actually, I must let go of this imagined gain if I'm to set myself and my enemies free. It's even more powerful because you actually set them and yourself free. If you think you have an enemy who's in prison, you are. Because it's not a nice state to be in. If you think you have an enemy and you can be hurt and attacked by your enemy, or you can hurt and attack them, you're not in a state of peace. Happiness and peace are gone. All right? So happy to move to number 4. Guilt must be given up and not concealed.
Guilt must be given up and not concealed. I must give up my guilt, not conceal it. Nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may, for some time, be followed by a deep retreat into fear. Nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the nature of this step may, for some time, be followed by a deep retreat into fear. For fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. For fear defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. Yet what an advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought a prisoner. No. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought me a prisoner? This real escape from guilt can lie only in the recognition that the guilt has gone. My real escape from belief in separation can lie only in the recognition that the belief in separation has gone. And how can this be recognized? And how can this be recognized as long as he hides it in another and does not see it as his own? And how can I recognize this as long as I hide in it another and do not see it
in another?
It in another and do not see it as my own. Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom and to make a jailer of an enemy seem to be safety. Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom and to make a jailer of an enemy seem to be safety? How then can he be released without an insane fear for yourself? How then can he be released without an insane fear for myself? You have made of him your salvation and your escape from guilt. I have made of him my awakening and my escape from belief in separation. Your investment in this escape is heavy, and your fear of letting go is strong. My investment in this escape is heavy, and my fear of letting go is strong.
Made of my enemy my freedom.
From the top, I must give my guilt rather than conceal it. Give up, I should say. Nor can I do this without some pain and a glimpse of the loving nature of this step. May for some time be followed by a deep retreat into fear, for fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when I recognize them, I experience their fear. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought a prisoner? My real escape from guilt can lie only in my recognition that my belief in separation has gone. And how can I recognize this as long as I hide it in another and do not see it as my own? Fear of escape makes it difficult for me to welcome freedom, and to make a jailer of my enemy seems to be my safety. How then can my enemy be released without an insane fear for myself? I have made of my enemy my freedom and my escape from guilt. My investment in this escape is heavy, and my fear of letting go is strong. So it's asking us to just give this guilt up rather than conceal it. But we can't do this without pain.
Yeah.
So you could end up being in a retreat of fear for a while after this.
So what is he's saying here in essence is that this enemy you've made apparently is your safety. The ego tells you this is what's going to keep you safe, and
It does the opposite.
tries to convince you of that fact, when in fact it's exactly the opposite. It's not keeping you safe, it's keeping you in hell. It's keeping you in a state of victimhood and suffering. But if you believe that having an enemy is your safety, then if I forgive my enemy, how can I not fear my own destruction? Because the ego fears its own undoing. Without an enemy, who would I be? Which is why these ancient enmities that seem to happen in this world. Think of now, we've got a war in Israel. Well, this has been going on for thousands of years. It's not exactly new. Why do the Jews and the Arabs hate each other? Because it keeps the egoic structure, egoic self-concept of each one going. That's why. And until they learn to forgive each other and recognize the truth that they are one, they are not separate, then the insanity will continue. Only way out of it is forgiveness. But then you see what would happen is a letting go of their identity as Jews or Arabs, of any kind of separation. They would no longer be a Jew or an Arab if they truly let go. Do you see the dilemma? And that's why it's so entrenched. So if they really forgave in the way that Yeshua is suggesting, forgive, radical forgiveness, they would no longer define themselves as Jewish or Arabic or even human. They would be enlightened and see that everyone is the same. See through the illusions of form and the insanity of believing in them to the eternal truth that there's only one awareness, one God, one pure formless awareness of perfect love that underlies it all. So it's completely insane to fight anyone because you're fighting yourself. But if you believe this, then the ego fears its destruction. Because it would correctly, the ego fears it because it will destroy that kind of radical forgiveness of your enemies and seeing them as one with you will destroy the ego. So it's correct in its fear. So then you can't forgive your enemy because the ego knows that that's going to be its destruction. So it holds on to the thoughts of enmity, fear, anger, hatred, and attack to preserve itself. As he says, my investment in this escape is heavy and my fear of letting it go is strong. I made of my enemy my freedom and my escape from guilt. So the ego says, well, you don't like the guilt, but that's fine. You've got an enemy, you can project it onto them. So they're now the guilty ones. They're the ones who are going to be punished for their imagined sin, and you're off the hook. That's what it's telling you. That's why he's saying this is your imagined freedom and your safety. So you see why we have a world where there are enemies, because the enemy plays in the ego's thought system a useful role. It's the scapegoat for the projection of your guilt. Now they are the guilty ones. They are going to be punished by God, not you. That's the rather insane and childish thought behind it. So the more I project my guilt onto them, the safer I become, according to the ego. And that's not true, because the more you project your guilt, the more guilty you feel underlying. So you haven't really got rid of it. You've actually just strengthened it. Whatever you keep giving, you're saying, I have plenty of it to give. So you strengthen the guilt, and the guilt demands punishment. So you are then bringing about your own punishment, which comes in the form of all the trials and tribulations of this world, and ultimately it was sickness, suffering, and death. So you're just punishing yourself. You're condemning yourself to suffering and death, a life of victimhood, suffering, and death, by projecting your guilt onto your enemies. And the ego doesn't want you to see that that's the case. It tells you, that strategy will work. So you have to keep coming back to the teachings of the Holy Spirit, saying, no, that's not going to work. It's never going to work. It never has worked. It never will work. Why do you expect what's never worked in the past will suddenly start working now? You can observe this in your own life and in these deep-seated conflicts. I mean, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or Arab-Jew conflict, if you want to take it in a broader sense, is just symptomatic of this idea of enemies. And it's been going on for millennia. Just shows you how persistent the ego is, and we have more of it. And until we drop the idea of an enemy, we're willing to radically forgive in this way, then these kind of conflicts will continue. And that's why this world has always had conflict and wars and so on, because it's inevitable if you believe in the ego's thought system that these things will occur. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on that? I think the key point is, look at how the ego works, understand how it works, and understand your own investment in this insane system. Why are you so invested in your enemies? Because it keeps your ego intact, and the ego tells you this is the way to get rid of your guilt. That's a key part of its strategy. Okay, get rid of your guilt by projecting it onto someone else. When in fact it doesn't work. You're not getting rid of your guilt. You strengthen your guilt. Project it out, you might feel better temporarily, but the guilt is still there and it comes back. And then, of course, the ego says, we'll project it some more. So attack, fear, and hate someone else even more, because that's going to get rid of your guilt. And it's a never-ending cycle. It never will. You just attack and fear and hate them even more and more until eventually that will spill over into acting it out, physical violence and attack, and then suffering in the physical body, and then death, your own or theirs. It's like, okay, was that smart? Really? Did that bring you peace and happiness and joy? Hardly. So why are you doing it? Let it go, give it up. And the ego finds that very difficult to do. It says, no, this is a real threat, real and present danger. We need to respond to this apparent threat. Of course, that makes the threat real, makes the enemy real, makes the ego's thought system real, and denies pure forms of oneness of perfect love. So even one little thought of it, like that's justified. No, it's not justified in any way, shape, or form. Can't justify insanity in any way, shape, or form. You have to be very vigilant of this. For even Marianne Williamson, I'm not saying she's been a great spiritual teacher, but I remember listening to an interview with her. And I think it's because she's got political ambitions. Before she was running for president, she was asked a question by the interviewer. Said, well, what do you think of Afghanistan? At that point, the US was involved in the war in Afghanistan. What do you think of that? And you could see it was just like she paused, and it was like the ego took over and she gave a very calculated answer. It didn't, you could see she wasn't her true self. It was like, well, she said that could, that the military could always be an option, something for the United States. And it was like, no, Marianne, that is not, according to the Course's teachings, that is not what Yeshua would have said. The military, i.e. attack and defense and this whole thought system of the ego is an option. No, absolutely not an option. It's something that must be denied and undone. But that's an example of how worldly ambition, because she obviously had political ambitions at that point, then comes in and it overrides the truth. And she gives a calculated answer, politically correct answer to an audience which is going to primarily be American listening to this in order to be popular. Because I don't want to seem to be anti-American. Because if I say, no, military is not an option, people might go, well, that's not very patriotic. I'm not going to vote for you. See? Which is why you can't have these kinds of worldly ambitions, because they hook you into the ego's structure. Yeshua was like, well, I don't need to be anything. I don't, they were like, you're going to be the king of the Jews. You're going to be some kind of savior from the Romans. You're going to lead us into rebellion. He's like, no, I'm not interested in any of it. The kingdom I'm talking about is the kingdom of heaven. It has nothing to do with anything of this world. So I want no title. I want no status or position in this world, because that's going to enslave me into its thought system. So it's a radical commitment. It's the truth and nothing else. Only the truth is true, and I stand only for that. And he was a person in history who did that. He stood purely for the truth, and he lived it purely, fully. Eventually crucified because of it, but transcended death because he was so pure. He was able to resurrect and show us that death isn't real. That this entire thought system, that's seemingly so fearful and heavy, can be transcended. Even death itself is nothing. So our job is to get over the resistance to this truth and accept that what he's saying is true, and then we must let go of our feelings of enmity towards our brothers and sisters. That's a given. We have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to.
Otherwise, we
I've got to
stay.
do another. Yeah,
Otherwise, we
I'm just
stay
going to
in
do
prison.
another. Yeah, I'm just going to do another 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm getting. Yeah,
Okay, well,
right.
let's see if we can finish it. It's 2 paragraphs.
Yeah. Stand still an instant now and think what you have done. I stand still an instant now and I think what I have done. Do not forget that it is you who did it, who can therefore let it go. I do not forget that it is I who did it and who can therefore let it go. Hold out your hand. I hold out my hand. This enemy has come to bless you. This enemy has come to bless me. Take this blessing and feel how your heart is lifted and your fear released. Take their blessing and feel how my heart is lifted, my fear released. Do not hold on to it, nor onto him. Do not hold on to it, nor onto him. He is the Son of God along with you. He is an extension of pure formless awareness of perfect love along with me. He is no jailer, but a manager of Christ. He is no jailer, but a messenger of my true self. Be this to him that you may see him thus. I am this to him that I may see him thus. From the top, I stand still for a moment now and think what I have done. I do not forget that it is I who did it and who can therefore let it go. I hold out my hand. This enemy has come to bless me. I take their blessing and feel how my heart is lifted with my fear released. I will not hold on to it, nor onto my perception of them as an enemy. They are the extension of perfect love along with me. They are no jailer, but messengers of my true self. I am this to them so that I may see them in this way. So it's just
Okay.
asking us to be still for a moment and think of what I've done.
And that really they're there to bless you. But the purpose of
Yeah,
the
the
enemy
enemy
is
has
to
come
make
to
you
bless.
realize
Yeah,
your own
yeah.
insanity, your own errors, and they allow you to free yourself. It's a total turnaround. Your enemy is actually your awakening. However, in the world, it's hard to know that. It's like someone can just really get to you, like, you know that feeling. It's like it wants that feeling of anger, enmity, and resistance so badly. It's like to change your mind and say, no, actually, this person is the same as me. They are pure formless awareness of perfect love. They actually are giving me the opportunity to free myself in this moment. Is very threatening, very challenging for the ego. But we've got to do it. You must, if you want freedom, which if you're doing this course, you're saying you do, and then you have to do that. There's no way you'll find freedom if you still have enemies. As he says, the enemy puts you in prison. Enemy is your jailer. You're in jail with them. So both in any war like Israeli-Palestinian conflict, both sides are in prison. They're imprisoned by their egos, and they're bound to play out its insane wishes in the conflict, which causes them both sides to suffering, injury, and death. Both are imprisoned by the ego in the conflict. So no one's really winning. Whoever apparently wins the war, no one's really won. Because actually, they're still imprisoned in the ego's thought system. So, the ego is still imprisoned in the ego's thought system. So, actually, they're still imprisoned in the ego's thought system. Because actually, they're still imprisoned in the ego's thought system. Because actually, they're still imprisoned in the ego's thought system. And that's why it will continue. So, okay, well, we apparently won, but the conflict will remain in the minds, and then it'll come again. Okay? A temporary cessation of hostilities, and then we'll carry on. Fighting will start again at some point, which is what's happened, isn't it? Over and over in the Middle East. Because forgiveness hasn't happened. All right. So if you read um, read number 6.
It is not easy to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts of any kind are always made to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. It is not easy for me to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts of any kind are always made up to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. These things are used for goals that substitute for God, and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. These things are used for goals that substitute for pure formless awareness of perfect love, and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. One need not ask explicitly. I need not only ask explicitly. The goal of God is lost in the request for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The goal of perfect love is lost in the quest for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. Now, the power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. No one who wants an enemy will fail to find one.
Still there, Lan?
Oh, yeah, well, the desire for them is the prayer.
Yeah, you went a bit further. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized from down there.
Where am I? Oh, there we are.
Okay.
Yeah, the power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. I who want an enemy will fail to find one, but just as surely will I lose the only true goal that is given me. I think of the cost and I understand it well. All other goals are the cost of perfect love.
Yeah, from the top.
It is not easy for me to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts of any kind, are always made to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. These things are used for goals that substitute for pure formless awareness of perfect love, and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. I need not ask explicitly. The goal of perfect love is lost in the quest for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. I who want an enemy will fail to find one, but just as surely I will lose the only true goal that is given me. I think of the cost and I understand it well. All other goals are at the cost of perfect love.
Okay, so thoughts on that?
Well, just lost the point of prayer. You know, we're thinking it's for things and human love and all those things. But it's not. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized. and it doesn't have enemies.
I think the key thing is here, desire. Desire for them is the prayer. It's the key line.
Mm.
So whatever we desire is our prayer. If I desire anything, I'm really praying for it, which is why it then comes into being. And often those desires are subconscious. And when I hate an enemy, I'm desiring hurt and pain to come upon them, then that becomes my desire for myself. That's because that's what I'm experiencing. And so we attract that which we are, not that which we just consciously think about. It's the underlying energy of the prayer or desire that's the effective. So we must let go of any desire for pain and suffering of to another or to ourselves in order to be free. So that's a very clear message in this. In letting go of that, we free ourselves and we free our enemies into a state of pure form. So when it's a perfect love, which is our true self, true nature. Okay, so why don't you just read this to round it off?
Yeah, no, I'm off now. I'm going to bid you good night. Yeah, I'll let you do it. I'll
5
let you
minutes,
do the
lad.
honors.
Why
No,
don't you just read it? 5
honestly,
minutes.
no,
Come on.
no, I'm ready to go now. So sorry. Right. So I'll see you. Have a nice weekend. Good night, Jono.
All right.
Good night.
See you Sunday. Okay, so in my understanding of prayer, come to realize that it's fundamentally for myself. There's always for myself. Praying for others, incorrectly understood, is about releasing my own projections of guilt onto my companions. Which will help me to see it's not them harming me, myself. My initial prayers, which are often tainted with envy and malice, a misguided cause for vengeance, not coming from a place of understanding, but from fear and the belief in separation. Or belief in separation and fear. Guilt and fear. Something else. So I've learned that the true purpose of prayer is lost when I pray for material things, status, or human love. So these are just ways to hide from my belief in separation and set up mental jailers. There's ways to hide from my belief in separation, set up mental jailers. These prayers are a deviation from the true goal, which is union with pure formless awareness of perfect love. So I can't find a true meaning in prayer if I pray for things, material things. And prayers just distract me from the true goal. As union with pure formless awareness of perfect love. So I recognize now that I must let go of my belief in separation. This is not without pain. This fear often makes me retreat and hide my belief in separation in others, seeing them as enemies rather than part of myself. Understanding that the belief in separation is gone can truly free myself. I have my guilt in others. Project my guilt onto others. Doesn't mean to perceive them as enemies rather than part of myself. I understand that my belief in separation is gone. I can truly free myself. So instead of what he's saying, instead of projecting our guilt onto others, making them to our enemies, we just see that entire belief in separation, belief that we are separated from pure formless awareness of perfect love, and the guilt for this belief. We believe that somehow we destroyed love. And now we are guilty for that and must be punished. But all of that is false. It's gone, it's undone in our minds. Then I truly free myself. I can stay in that free state. So I now see that my enemy is not a jailer, but a messenger of my true self. An extension of perfect love. This realization is a blessing, lifting my heart and releasing my fears. Blessing to me, lifting my heart and releasing my fears. I understand I'm holding on to these fears and it keeps me imprisoned. Letting go, I see that the true value, freeing others and myself, as we are all connected in the realm of perfect love. Go, receive the true value, freeing others and myself, as we're all connected in the realm of perfect love. So it's pointing us to ultimate freedom, liberation from the dream, liberation from guilt, fear, sin. And all this happens when we just let go of our belief in enemies. So I perceive the true value in freeing others. And therefore myself, as we're all connected, as we are all same in the realm of perfect love. So the key message, the true prayer is always for myself. It helps me release beliefs in separation. Helps me release myself from guilt, belief in separation. Underlies guilt. Recognize others as extensions of perfect love. Letting go of fear and embracing this unity, find freedom and a deeper connection with my true self. And letting go of letting go of my belief in enemies. Go of my hatred of my enemies. Accept this unity. And freedom and deeper connection with my true self. So really, what this is saying is that we need to let go of our enemies, let go of our belief in guilt, fear, hatred, and attack. When we do that, we set ourselves free, not only them, but set ourselves free. If we maintain our enemies are real, we keep the ego's thought system in place, and we imprison ourselves in this insane prison of mental thought forms, belief in separation and sense of sin and guilt, fear and attack and hatred and anger. Inevitably, that leads to accusation, blame, and attack, and leads to sickness and suffering and ultimately death. So we enslave ourselves into that whole thought system, that reality, when we believe in the reality of our enemies, and when we forgive them by letting go of any negative thoughts that arise in us in response to them, such as guilt and fear and sin and attack, hatred, anger and jealousy and rage and so on. We free ourselves from the ego's thought system. We find freedom and deeper connection with them. We realize that we are one with them in truth. Cannot and have never been separate from them or from our true self, Christ, or from our source, pure formless source, perfect love. Which remains the same, which remains untouched, no matter what. So that's the message. It's just a lovely one to end on. So I hope you enjoyed this, and join us again soon, and join us for one of these live sessions. So if you're not a member already, then join us in the free masterclass I'm running on Sunday evening from 6 p.m. UK time. It's 8 p.m. South African time, 7 p.m. Central European time, and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. Join us then for masterclass that shall talk about how you can really set yourself free this year by studying these profound teachings in the Course in Miracles. So go to theaolg.com, theaolg.com, standing for theartsoflettinggo.com, to find out more and register for this free masterclass. You'll be sent the login details and a couple of emails to remind you and some more information. You can also go to lifebuild.com, that's lifebuild.com, to sign up for the information that I showed you up front. Get the daily inspirational quote, and there's the daily lesson and commentary on the quotes and lead up to the lesson, and also a meditation and short breath break every day. So sent to you via Telegram. Go to lifebuild.com to do that. The links should be below in the text box. If you're looking at this video on YouTube, just check below and click either of those links. Follow the prompts. And finally, if you're not already a member, then subscribe to the channel so you can be notified whenever we go live. That's 6 days a week, Monday to Friday and Sunday. I broadcast these live, so you'll be notified on your device, phone, that we're live, and you can join in the live stream, or you can catch the recording at a later point. Okay, so that's a wrap for now. Thank you for watching, listening. Thanks to Elaine for joining. Hope to see you soon on the inside. Take the next step. Listen to the guidance. It's just one step at a time, being a little bit willing. So if you're feeling that call now to subscribe, to join the masterclass, or sign up to my Telegram list, then go do that. Follow the links below. And I hope to catch you on the inside soon. Thanks for listening, and namaste. Which means the true self has no enemies. Christ in me acknowledges and honors that same true self, no enemies. Just the Christ in you.